As president of the Richland Bean Blossom School Holding Corporation, I'd like to call this May 18th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. meeting to order. And first, we'll start with roll call. Kenny Williams?
Here.
And Randy Wright?
Here.
Jerry Cravens here. And the first item of the agenda is to approve the minutes of the meeting of April 2020, and I will entertain a motion and a second.
I have read them and I will move to approve the minutes as written.
Do I hear a second? Okay.
Second.
Awesome. Randy, Kenny makes a motion and Randy seconds. So our next item on the agenda is the consideration of adoption of the board resolution.
Let's get a vote real quick on the minutes just to button that up.
Do I hear a vote for the approval of the minutes April 20? Kenny made a motion, Randy second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved unanimously. So now let's move on to item number 4, consideration of the adoption of bond resolution.
Yes, we have Jacob McCullum from Boys McKinney and also Matt Shoemaker, who's with Stiefel, who's our underwriter. So Jacob, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Yeah, the resolution before you, it's very similar to what we did last year. We're issuing under the same indenture. So it authorizes this is your last authorization step before the issuance of bonds. It authorizes bonds in a not to exceed amount of $8 million for the 2 projects, the high school project, the operation and administration facilities project. It authorizes a supplement to the trust indenture that you guys entered into last year. So the bonds will be secured under that same indenture on a parity with those prior bonds. It also authorizes an official statement. Stiefel's counsel is kind of helping put that together, and that's basically like a prospectus that goes out to investors that want to purchase the bonds. It authorizes an addendum to lease. So once we price the bonds, we've included not to exceed amounts in the lease amendment, and we've included provision in there to reduce the payments to the actual amounts of debt service. So they get reduced to debt service plus a little bit extra for trustee fees. And then it authorizes a bond purchase agreement for the purchase of the bonds from Stiefel. And it authorizes, to the extent that Stiefel goes out to the market and finds out that there's a bank that might want to buy these instead of selling it to investors in the open market, they're authorized to do that if it makes financial sense. And then it authorizes you guys to take any and all other steps and sign any and all other documents necessary in furtherance of the issuance of the bonds. As far as timing, we're still on kind of the same timetable that we sent around kind of early. We should have a POS draft here soon, probably a rating, probably early June with pricing, probably mid-June and closing kind of later in June. With that, I don't know, Matt, if you had anything to add, or I know you folks have been through all this before, so if there's questions too, let me know.
Do we know what the market rates are right now for these bonds at these maturities?
Yeah, so we updated everything late last week, and just in terms of the market, obviously there was a huge hiccup there in March with the beginning of the virus. Interest rates really went very, very high comparative to the last 5 years. We have seen interest rates come all the way back down. They've gotten better, I think, for 10 consecutive business days. So the market really is back to pre-virus levels, which is really, really great for schools trying to borrow money. Our best guess as of now is you're looking at about a 2.5% after all fees and costs. That's through the public market with traditional investors. I know Jacob mentioned a potential private placement with banks. We have talked to banks. We think that they're closer to 3%. So as of today, we would expect it to go through the public market. but we've seen those rates flip pretty quickly over the last couple months. So this is something that we're going to look at daily and weekly, and it will come down to the wire, and we will present the school with both options, and whatever yields the best interest rates, that's the way we'll end up going. And we are on schedule. We have requested a rating. We expect to have a rating early June and hit a pricing date of June 9th as of now. So everything is on schedule.
Jerry, can I ask you a question? Now that I've already given you my signature on these resolutions, are our board members, are we bonded against liability on anything like this?
Yeah, Christine, you want to answer that question?
I don't know the answer to that. Jacob, do you know the answer to that?
I think statutorily, you guys are not subject to liability, and all the documents will say that these are payable solely from the lease payments, and that the holder of the bonds, by their acceptance of the bonds, releases the members, the board of directors, prior members and future members and current members from all liability.
Okay, as long as I'm not on the hook for $8 million, Jerry could, but I couldn't afford it.
Sure.
I was just curious before.
Yeah, it's statutory, and then, like I said, it's typical in all these deals to just specifically say what they're payable from, and to have bondholders by their acceptance kind of consent to that. So, but we can add Jerry in there too.
Okay.
Jerry, yes.
Yeah, right.
So are we at the point where we need a motion to approve these resolutions?
Yes, unless you guys have any other questions.
I forget, how many separate resolutions are there here that we need to vote on?
It's just one bond resolution tonight, and that's the last one.
I make a motion that we approve the resolution as written.
Kenny has made the, and I need a second. Kenny's made the motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
Who said that?
Randy.
Randy. Okay. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 There's only 3 of us, Jerry.
Yeah, I know. I got my 2 dogs here, so.
I heard him.
I haven't been president of the board for 25 years, so my Robert's rules are kind of rusty. So
you're doing well. You're doing well.
Okay, so there's no other business. Do I hear a motion for the meeting to be adjourned?
Well, is there any other business that we need to take care of, Jerry?
No. We're good.
Okay, I'll second Randy's motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 You're welcome. Everybody's welcome to stay on for the board meeting at 7 p.m.
The school board for our Richland Bean Blossom Community School Corporation, our May regular meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for joining tonight. All board members are present on this Zoom meeting. So visitors' comments, we did put out a invitation for visitors to comment. If they wanted to call in, they could get a conference number or email in, and we did not have anyone who chose to do so. So we have no visitor comments for tonight. So we'll begin with our consent agenda. What we have on the consent agenda is the approval of minutes for the April 20th, 2020 regular school board meeting. We have a financial, we have the treasurer's report for April of 2020. We have claims. In claims, we have gross wages on April 9th of $1,110.99. Gross wages on April 10th for $631,856.28. Gross wages on April 24th for $620,148.17, for total gross wages of $1,253,115.44. We also have claims. We have prepays for the month of April of $807,626.23. Regular vouchers of May 18th at $229,940.35, and Forest Hill vouchers of May 19th at $3,334.51, for total vouchers of $1,040,901.09. We also have the total for the total vouchers and payrolls altogether is $2,294,016.53. We also have a number of donations. I've seen these every month and got a long list. We have $1,000 from Ellettsville Christian Church for the Student Assistance Fund, $1,000 from Dwight and Roget Hector for the Student Assistance Fund. We have a $100 donation from Dwayne and Patrick Hornick for the food truck, a $300 donation from Michael Gouldy and Lana Beardag for the food truck. We have a case of baggies and a case of grocery bags from Mariah Coos, from O'Charlie's, Carson's Barbecue, Mother Bear's, Jimmy John's, Panera, all provided lunch for kitchen workers. And we also have a $115 gift certificate to Underground Cupcakes from the RBB Keynote Group for the kitchen workers. We also, under personnel, we have resignation to retirements, non-renewals, leaves and terminations D1 through D5, and appointments and transfers E1 through E8. Would Dr. Sanders, do you have any comments on any of these?
Yes, I just wanted to. Okay, yes, I just wanted to really mention a few folks who unfortunately are leaving RBB, Kyla Pine, Anna Poe, and Sarah Babbert. And it's really just life is taking them in another direction, and we've really enjoyed having them as part of our team. And then I especially want to mention Janet Crawford, who's retiring after 32 years in education. She started in 1988, and believe it or not, that was the year after I started. But she's retiring, and she has some exciting plans for her. And I just hear all kinds of great things. I just heard a story just yesterday about Mrs. Crawford, and so we're going to miss her, but we're excited about her new life ahead of her.
Thank you, Dr. Sanders. Now I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move approval.
Mr. Durnall will second.
Okay. Mrs. Mary moved for approval and Mr. Durnall seconded. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, I'll take the vote by roll call. Mr. Durnall?
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mary?
Yes.
And Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
And Mr. Kerr is also a yes. So the consent agenda passes 5-0. Our next item on the agenda is the business manager's report. So I'll turn that over to Matt Irwin.
Hi guys, hopefully you guys received the email from Dr. Sanders that had the cash flows in it. We'll start off as always with the education fund. A few things that I wanted you all to notice are that I made a few adjustments to some of the projections of revenues. One of those being on the interest earned line. I've reduced it for the remainder of the year due to the dramatic dip that we've had in interest earned through return rates at the bank. I have the 2020 interest revenue projections cut in half from where they were in 2019. I also reduced the rents and fees projection lines by about 66% through August, just because of the buildings being shut down. We're not pulling in that revenue as well. Overall, if you look over into the far right, as you see that sheet every month, even with those adjustments, we're still on track for what we wanted to continue to work to do and continue to grow and keep that fund balance at a healthy level, which is definitely a positive thing. And we'll continue to track that and stay on top of those projections to make sure they're as accurate as possible as new information becomes available. In the operations, things are definitely continuing in the right direction as well there. We did receive a nice refund of premium on our old workman's comp insurance after the year-end audit. You'll see that kind of beefed up on the line for other miscellaneous. So that was a lot bigger for that reason. We also still have the property tax collection in June split at about 50%, as we anticipate not seeing a full disbursement of taxes in June due to the delay in penalty for late property tax payments. We'll talk more on that as we look at the possibility of using the Indiana Bond Bank like we talked about, and I brought that up last month, and we'll talk about that again here later to help with cash flows if the June disbursement of taxes doesn't allow us to stay where we need to be cash flow wise. Again, though, looking at the year-end projection as far as cash balances, we're in a good shape as we head into the summer months. And really overall, we feel good about our position financially at this point. And we're even more grateful for the gains that were made in 2019 and fund balances, for all that work that was done there with Paul and you guys and Jerry and the team before I got here. That's definitely a great thing for us to be in that position, just heading into that uncertainty of the fall. With the state and the funding formula, it's likely to present school corporations with a lot of challenges. You know, many school officials, as I'm on some chats with people around the state, they're really worried about the funding formula, just because education is 45% of the state's budget. And the longer this coronavirus goes on and the more impact it has, you know, it can affect us. But with what we're doing right now financially, we're in a good spot to withstand that. And so we're really happy with the way things are moving along at this point.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Matt?
Dana, I got one quick question on Matt. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I saw on Dr. Sanders' report that we're going to have a virtual summer school. And I saw the summer school listed on your projected cash flow with a zero balance. Are we reimbursed for that at all?
So the state always sets a line item for what they're going to budget for the year for summer school that they'll reimburse schools for, but it's never enough to cover the full cost for everybody in the state. So inevitably they do reimburse you, but it's never the full amount of the cost, but it does offset some of the burden financially that the school takes on from doing that summer school opportunities.
Okay, because we'll still have the same teacher costs as we would for normal summer school.
I'm sorry, say that again.
We'll still have the same teacher cost like for regular summer school. We're going to have a teacher doing this.
Yeah, so we'll still have associated with it. And then that usually gets receipted in when they do the reimbursement. That comes in around October, November is usually when you see that reimbursement amount that they give to us. We have already had to submit reports to the state of estimated costs and stuff like that, so they can start to gather information from people around the state just to know what they're doing, and to also look at about how much of those funds they're going to be able to cover for around the state. You know, it's never going to be the full amount. It hasn't been, and that's what they've communicated to us as well, is that it's never that full amount. But you do see some of that reimbursement to offset some of those costs.
Okay, thank you.
We actually put in a higher amount for estimated costs this year, just because we didn't know what to expect. So we put in more than we normally have.
Any further questions for Matt?
No.
Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on. Our next item is consideration to approve the 2020 construction bond resolution. I'll turn it over to Dr. Sanders.
Yes, so I would like to introduce Jacob McClellan with Boys McKinney and Evans, who is our bond counsel, and also Matt Shoemaker from Stiefel, who's our bond underwriters, and they will be presenting the final bond resolution to us tonight for your approval.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Sanders. Yeah, this is Jacob. This is the same process we went through last year for the issuance of the bonds. This resolution is the last authorizing step before we proceed to issue bonds. The resolution authorizes bonds in an amount not to exceed $8 million for the high school project and the operational and administration facilities project. It authorizes an official statement, which is the offering document or prospectus for the bonds. It authorizes a bond purchase agreement with Stiefel for them to purchase the bonds from the building corp. It authorizes an addendum to lease. When the bonds are priced, the lease payments will be taken down. The lease payments in the amendment to lease are not to exceed amounts, so the addendum will take them down to the level of debt service on the bonds, plus a little bit for trustee fees. And it authorizes, in the event that Stiefel determines that it would be more advantageous to privately place the bonds, they have that opportunity. And it authorizes the taking of any other actions necessary in furtherance of the issuance of the bonds by the board. So as far as timing, there'll be an offering document available probably in the next week or so. I think Stiefel's looking at receiving the rating on the bonds in early June, with pricing toward mid-June and closing kind of the last week of June. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I can turn it over to Matt to give you an update.
Thanks, Jacob. Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I know I've presented on the financial impact with the stated goal of a tax rate of under $1.12, which would get you back to the 2017 tax rate. In terms of the market, it's been quite a roller coaster over the past couple of months. As you can imagine, I'm sure you follow the stock market. The bond market has moved in much the same way. We saw a historic run-up in rates early to mid-March. We have seen them come back down pretty quickly. I think we've had 10 straight trading days of interest rates improving. Based on current rates, we would estimate your bonds to sell in the open market right now at about a 2.5%. That's including all fees and costs that would be paid out to professionals. Which, when you're talking 20-year money, historically, that is very, very attractive. So things could change certainly in the next 3 weeks, as you know. But as we sit here right now, the market is back to being very, very good when looking at historical rates. So we're right on target with everything. We're looking to get the rating early June and then price these bonds somewhere around June 9th. To get the school money in the second half of June. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but from where I sit, I think everything is in really good shape.
That sounds very good.
Thank you. We're actually waiting for Brad got kicked off, so we're trying to see if he can get back on. Technology. Sorry,
Rick. Thank you for your patience.
I texted him to see if he could get back on.
Thanks again for your patience, everyone. We will give Mr. Tucker a few more minutes to be involved. This is a very important resolution, and so I'd like to make sure he was involved. Do any other board members have any questions for either Matt or Jacob?
No, I'm just glad that I was worried about it. So I'm glad to hear that things are moving in the right direction. That makes me feel at ease a little bit here.
I have a question on the rate. I'm not sure I really understood. The rate is about 2.5 now, but why are we not signing now? Why are you saying in maybe 3 weeks it would change, which very easily could? When are we going to actually get the rate sealed?
Yeah, so the rate won't be set until we actually sell the bonds. Right now, we're targeting a June 9th date. So tonight is final approval on a board level. We will proceed with the offering document, obtaining a credit rating. And once we have all of that complete, we will go out to the market. But we are not in position to do that now until we have full approval and complete those other steps I just mentioned.
I remember that now.
And I would just add, you guys have since we're amending a building corporation lease, we published notice after the last board meeting. There's a 30-day objection period. So we're waiting for that before we release our offering document. That's typically what you do. And then once that's released, it gives Matt, a week or so to go ahead and market and sell the bonds. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Instead of keep me rolling, I'll catch up if I can like do. I'm gonna have him call me.
There we go.
Okay.
Can you hear me today?
It appears that Brad is still trying to get on, Mr. Tucker, but we will continue to move forward. So do we have a motion to approve the 2020 construction bond resolution?
I move approval.
This is Angie. I second.
Dana, I have Brad on the phone here. He can hear, probably can hear from my computer.
Oh yeah, I can hear you guys.
Okay. Are you ready to vote on this proposal?
For the bond resolution?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He's ready.
Okay. It was moved by Mrs. Mary and seconded by Mrs. Jacobs. So by roll call, Mr. Durnall.
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs.
Yes.
Mrs. Mary.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
And Mr. Kerr is also yes. The bond resolution passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Durnall and Mr. Tucker, for working together to get him back on.
Awesome.
So our next item on the agenda, exciting item, is the Ready Schools Implementation Plan update. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Sanders again.
Yes, and before I go on, I just want to thank Jacob and Matt for helping us throughout this process. These guys are always very informative, and they're keep us on our toes and make sure we're doing all the things that we should be to take good care of our tax dollars that the community sends us. So thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Matt.
All right, thanks, everyone. I'm going to drop too.
Yep, thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
So if you remember last August, we being Richland Bean Blossom School Corporation was awarded an ROI Ready Schools Planning Grant. And it certainly has been a great experience throughout the whole year. And even something called COVID-19 could not stop us. And so we have really accomplished a lot. It started back in the fall with interviews and involved so many throughout the corporation giving their input as a corporation, individuals representing their individual schools, working on a corporation level, and then eventually leading towards meetings with staffs at each individual school. And we're to the point now where Jamie Miller has been working around the clock, no kidding, to help us to develop our Ready Schools implementation plan that we will present to ROI on May 29th. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie at this time. Hey, yeah, there you go.
Dr. Sanders, am I able to share my screen?
Yes. Oh.
I need to give you the host.
Yes, just momentarily. You can take it back. All right, you're good. All right. Oh. Should I admit Mr. Tucker back into the meeting? Are you okay with me doing that?
Yes.
I'm going to just go ahead and take the initiative to do that. Okay. Thanks for your patience. Hi, Brad. I hope you're back. All right. So as part of the Ready Schools process, the timing was really perfect to alongside an exploration process of really looking at best practices elsewhere. We were also able to gather so much information from our own stakeholders about who we are and who we strive to be as a school corporation to really meet the needs not only of our students and our families, but of our employers and our community as a whole, with a real sense of responsibility to the ongoing economic prosperity of our region by ensuring that there's the talent that we need to retain in the region to be successful economically. With that, we really wanted to also take a look at the language that supports who we are as a district, our vision and mission language. And tonight, Dr. Sanders will ask for your approval of that language, along with it, some branding and logo assets that we really have put more energy into creating than we ever dreamed would be necessary, but really tirelessly working in various teams to redefine our identity as a school district to reflect all of the findings from this exploration process. So a lot of information has been gathered and synthesized to really create this brand identity for our district. And Dr. Sanders, of course, feel free to jump in at any point. But just a general overview of this. This is the logo along with the start of the mission and vision language, caring, daring, and preparing. Those three words are really what started to shape our identity or our brand as a school district, as three of the most prevalent words that came out and really captured the identity of the district. So this idea that we really have this small town feel, a caring environment, a community that just genuinely shows up for our kids. And alongside the opposite, or the flip side of that, juxtaposed against that, is the daring identity that as a corporation and as a community, it was evident that families and students and teachers are really demonstrating a growth mindset and a willingness to take instructional risks and to try new things, to embrace kind of this evolving definition of learning and teaching that is necessary to prepare our students for a very different workforce than any of us were maybe educated into through school. And of course, all in pursuit of preparing them for this evolution post-graduation. The idea that we're not necessarily preparing students for a lifelong career anymore, but really an opportunity to demonstrate resilience and adaptability And I'll get into some more of those skills that go into this here in a moment. But the logo just really captures, hopefully, who we are representing each of the schools and the colors of those schools in this leaf shape that speaks to the history of the district and the idea of the Richland and the Bean Blossom townships, along with the edge of the woods, and just a lot of natural roots there, but also the idea of that growth and that evolution, that we're willing to embrace change and embrace ongoing lifelong learning, just as a plant or a leaf would. So Dr. Sanders, did I miss anything with the logo?
Just that everything you're going to hear with the logo and the mission and vision statements, all that really grew out of the surveys and the interviews that were conducted last fall. If you remember, in January 2019, the board approved a marketing plan, and one of the components of that marketing plan was rebranding the school corporation. And that's what led to giving the surveys. And I don't know if you remember the word clouds that we shared with everybody, which represented the key words that came out of the what was really important, the big rocks that came out of the surveys from parents, students, and staff. And so from the logos through the mission and vision statements, the caring, daring, and preparing, all that were really founded in our surveys and interviews, and then throughout the year, just we really pounded all this out and really debated and discussed, and what you see here is really a lot of work, more than any other time in my career. I've never felt more people who were involved in this process. And I just like the logo because green being for the preschool, going around the leaf, green to yellow for primary. As students are moving from preschool to the primary school, students moving into the intermediate school for the blue, and then the red for the junior high, and then on to the red and black and the white E for Edgewood High School. I just think it really is an exciting story to tell. And I'll turn it back over to Jamie if she wants to go over the mission and vision statements.
Yeah, so we're obviously kind of working backwards, trying to incorporate all of the mission and vision language into these branding assets. But just to give you a little bit of a glimpse of how the same artwork, the same concept will hopefully be extrapolated out to each of the building level branding assets as well. So the language that's kind of informing those logos, the mission statement, this is who we are, who we think we're perceived to be, and we aspire to be right now as a school district. That we're a caring, daring, and preparing school district, a family who cares about our students, their families, and the community. We dare to promote bold innovations to help all learners succeed and to prepare them to change their world for the better. So hopefully that language continues to resonate through the rest of these strategies with our implementation plan. And the vision language is who we commit to becoming, what we want to strive to work towards. So there's a little bit more here, but essentially we're committing as a school corporation, as RBB, to providing authentic and relevant learning, to developing more robust and more broad family and community connections, to encouraging the use of innovative tools and spaces, to promoting workforce readiness, a common vision for preparing our graduates for the workforce, and then of course nurturing the whole child, keeping social and emotional needs at the forefront of what we're doing. We all know students can't learn workforce readiness if they aren't ready to learn just as a person, as an individual.
So hopefully you could see, because of this being grounded in what our RBB family had to say about what they thought RBB represented, So it represents kind of who we are, but also with the initiatives of where we're going with the school corporation as a part of Ready Schools. So it's also telling our future, our direction, giving us a vision of where we want to go. So that's another thing, reason why I like the mission and vision statements is because it's who we are and it's also who we're going to be.
So with that, the implementation plan has 14 strategies really across 3 different focus areas or pillars. And I'm going to just kind of give a general overview of those. But at the core of this, just to again reiterate the context of this design process, these are the 6 core principles of the Ready Schools initiative. So this grant-funded discovery process to really foster strategic planning as a school district is all rooted in these 6 principles. That every student will be engaged in a relevant path to success, that students will graduate high school ready for post-secondary and career success. Those really just mean every student will leave with a plan. Every student will be able to make informed decisions about what they intend to do after graduation. Number 3 is meaningful and ongoing collaboration occurs among schools, industries, and community. Teaching and learning is grounded in relevancy. So we're not just doing things because they're buzzwords or instructional initiatives that are gaining traction elsewhere, but because these are really strategies or instructional practices that are relevant to our community and our workforce needs. K-12 schools are all aligned around a common vision of student success. That's that preschool through high school alignment, that we have progressions in place for intentional decisions about instruction, creating scaffolds all the way up through each student's educational experience. And then the last one, schools embrace the significant role they play in achieving regional prosperity. So just that idea that our collaborative efforts are mutually beneficial, that we have a responsibility to employers and to community members to ensure that our graduates are ready to enter and contribute to the workforce. So we're not just seeking partnership to support the schools, but demonstrating the value added to partners as well. So really the flagship for this whole plan is the idea of this graduate profile. And what this is a skill set that exemplifies who we want our graduates to be, the type of person, the type of worker, the type of collaborator that we want to send out into the world. This skill set, a team has already started working on an initial prototype to put the skill set out, and I'll show that in just a second for feedback from all stakeholder groups. But this profile is really what all of these other strategies are informing. So creating a graduate that has these real, relevant, authentic skills that they're going to be able to apply in whatever pathway they endeavor to begin post-graduation, whether that's to become enrolled in college, whether they intend to become employed immediately after graduation, to enlist in a branch of the military, whatever their intentions are, they have the skills to be successful in that plan. So these other strategies all will hopefully inform how and to what extent our graduates are exemplifying this skill set. So this is just a brief overview of those 6 types of skills that a team of educators from all of the schools have come together and really refined this at length through hours and hours of conversations to arrive at these 6 types of traits with some descriptors underneath them to help. So really the idea of creating graduates who are effective communicators and collaborators, who are able to think critically and innovate. So think outside the box and continue to press norms, and are compassionate and resilient individuals. So within those, there are additional descriptors. And then over the next school year, the 2021 school year, grade level teams and building teams will work to build out what these character traits look like at every grade level. Obviously, an articulate communicator in a kindergarten classroom is going to look a little different than at the high school level. And courage and creative, critical thinking, even empathy, all of these skills are going to be exemplified very differently at each grade level. So we really grappled with how robust of language to use in this. We really wanted these skills to be something to strive for. So there are some bold words in there that we settled on intentionally so that we can use those grade level exemplars to really build this out as a true exemplar for what a graduate could and should be. So to say that every one of our graduates is walking across the stage right now with this skill set might be a stretch goal, but ultimately that's the goal of this plan, this 3 to 5 year strategic plan, is that we're putting experiences and curriculum and teacher training in place to ensure that ultimately every graduate leaves with these skills. So any questions on that before I get down to the strategy level? And again, I'm going to kind of just gloss over the strategies, but stop me at any point if you have any questions. So again, those 14 strategies have been broken down into 3 pillars that are innovative. Here we go. Innovative teaching and learning, career awareness and readiness, and then family and community engagement. And this is just really how we organized those and structured them. So innovative teaching and learning is essentially reimagining how we're doing school in the ways that we're already doing it. So building on an existing strategy, for example, project-based learning is an initiative that has been implemented in all of our schools over the last 4 years and is really becoming part of who we are and part of how we do school. So digital fabrication and digital design and fabrication is going to be kind of the upskill of project-based learning. So students aren't just imagining solutions to problems. Pantry 279 is a perfect example that got some face time in the paper this week. That food pantry started out as an idea that a Girl Scout troop had to impact their community in a positive way. A group of students saw a need, saw that there were not resources like that in Ellettsville, and certainly not to the extent that were needed. And they saw a problem and they solved a problem. So that's the premise of project-based learning. And now with digital design and fabrication, the idea is that our students can engage in that sort of problem solving, but actually prototype and create market-ready products that they could incorporate into a student-run business, or they could pitch to a panel of community members and really feel like they're engaging in a more robust way and developing some of those really transferable skills. So each of those first 5 strategies, differentiating our teacher learning, reestablishing professional learning communities, again, the digital design and fabrication, video production teams, and how we're creating collaborative learning environments for students to learn in. Those are all ways that we're trying to enhance and really reinforce how we're innovating in our existing classrooms. Any questions about those, that first pillar?
Not for me.
So career awareness and exploration, these 2 strategies really work in tandem. Creating this progression of career-related experiences is really founded on the idea that students especially, but families and staff also voiced concerns that students had initial exposure to a career opportunity. Maybe in elementary, they understand what community helpers are and what some of the very traditional high-profile careers like police officers, teachers, firefighters, they know what they do, they know what their parents do, and then they may have an experience in high school where they engage in an internship outside of the classroom, but there just wasn't a continuous progression for career-related experiences. So these 4 layers of awareness, exploration, preparation, and training are hopefully going to be a scaffold to build in career-related experiences every year of a student's experience of their education, so that field trips in elementary are aligned to general career awareness, exposing them to different employers and opportunities in our community, so that any sort of job shadow event or even extracurriculars like robotics and Project Lead the Way curriculum it's all being aligned with that extra layer of awareness and exploration so that students know why they're learning what they're learning and they know what opportunities that learning ties to in their future. So that, again, they can make informed decisions. Different examples of implementation with these strategies are ways that the counselors will engage with students earlier to make intentional decisions about high school, the way we're choosing even what courses to offer at the high school intentionally so that every course has a relevant career connection and is there available to students for a reason. And everything we do comes back to preparing them for life after graduation, for their career readiness or college readiness through, again, expanding dual credit and opportunities like that. And then preparation is really just learning through work, whether those are short opportunities or prolonged internships, starting to expose them to actually practicing skills in authentic settings. So student-run enterprises, one of the really neat novel ideas that's coming of this plan is the idea of a student-run enterprise. Everywhere Dr. Sanders and the design team and myself visited over this year, we would see different examples of student-run enterprises, a machine shop or a print shop, a design shop, different ways that students were contributing to their community and actually, in a lot of cases, profit sharing and gaining, payment on the job for these experiences. But in every case, we said that's a great experience for their community. What's the fit for us? What's the need that our students could meet? And really an idea, it sounds maybe less impactful at first glance than a machine shop or a print shop, but the idea of a coffee shop is something that came of really organic thinking and conversations and has really taken root at the high school as a pretty exciting initiative, an entrepreneurial initiative that students will be able to engage in and really represent all different walks and all different career paths in the future, from the obvious service learning and the food service industry to leadership opportunities, business opportunities, starting your own entrepreneurial endeavor, and just incorporating as many students into these strategies as possible is the goal. So finding ways to scale any of these examples to as broad of a sample of students so that we're impacting more than just a handful of seniors or a handful of 8th graders in a particular, reality store experience. We're scaling strategies that are already working and in place to really create innovative opportunities for students to practice, again, those real world experiences. So any questions about that second pillar? And the third one is quick, I promise. The third pillar really just comes back to the data that we received from our discovery process, from all of our stakeholders, just the idea of streamlining communication. We're a small enough district that it's a reasonable expectation to really streamline communication across all of our schools, but each school has a unique identity in that we have to be intentional about how we're preserving that identity and focusing communication at the building level on needs there, but just being as efficient with resources and how we're sharing out information. So some of the examples of implementation here are an updated website, streamlining the use of social media accounts, really trying to access our families and our community members through as many different strategies as possible. So hosting different events, especially when the new Innovative Learning Center is built at the high school, and using that as a platform to engage community partners and employers with our students, hosting things like meet and greet or luncheon events for our interns so that they can interact in a variety of ways with their internship hosts and interact with various employers, and just, again, gain as many experiences and as different of experiences with different opportunities that they could explore post-graduation so that every decision that they're making is an informed decision. So yeah, and then I guess the only other thing in that third pillar that I really haven't spoken to is the idea of family connectivity, and keeping our families connected to social resources is something that came up a lot in the feedback. But now, especially given recent events, keeping families connected to quite literally, connectivity, internet connectivity at home was the most recent example of this, and just connecting community members and potential supports so that our students and our families can continue to engage in e-learning with as painless of a process as possible, as painful as learning from home feels at times, just making that process hopefully as successful as we can for our students and for our families, so that if remote learning is something that has to be revisited as a strategy again in the future, we've connected families with every resource possible to make sure that they're successful in doing so. So that's really the overview of the plan. And again, I'll take any questions. I inevitably left you wondering something.
Well, for one, I am very excited about these initiatives. To think of where we started a few years ago with STEM and increase to STEAM and all the efforts put into taking that further and further and further. I'm really excited about preparing our students for whatever their future holds. And so I think this is amazing. I really appreciate all the hard work that Jamie Miller and Dr. Sanders and all, it's a large team that did this. Also, there's an advisory team that includes community members as well. And so we're really thankful for all of those people for their hard work so far. And I think it's amazing where we've come with this. And again, just kudos to everyone involved. I think this really does help Edgewood Schools be the place for your student to go to. So thank you so much.
I agree. This is Angie. That's what I was going to say, is that it looks wonderful, and I'm really excited to see your momentum keep going. And I applaud you, Jamie, and Dr. Sanders and the community for collaborating and just, getting RBB to continue to strive to be the best. Because we know that we just have to show everybody that we are, and we're going to, and that's wonderful.
This is Deborah. I agree. It's a lot of hard work has obviously gone into this, and it's a great plan. And unlike things that have happened a few years back, I do believe this is going to happen like this, and students can look forward to getting a great education.
Yes, Jamie, as I said Friday, thank you so much for your efforts. It's really, really very interesting for me.
Thank you.
Jamie ditto. Hey, Jamie, I'm going to ask you to go back to one slide, to the grad profile skills slide.
Sure.
All right. Now, this is my end of the meeting comments, Dr. Sanders. I'm going to get them over with. Those six captions right there: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, innovation, compassion, and resiliency. That's RBB the last 2.5 months. So hats off. As you were reading that, I was just thinking all 6 of those have been going on without any inkling it was needed to be. But I appreciate everything that everybody's done over the last 2.5 months. And thanks, Jamie, to you and the ROI committee for all your hard work. And thanks for sharing that and explaining it to me last week as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're very welcome.
Okay, thanks again, Jamie, for the presentation. And that actually leads us very easily into our next item on the agenda, which is consideration to approve the new logo and mission and vision statements. Dr. Sanders?
Yes, I'm not going to go over the explanation again for the logo and the mission statement and vision statement, but I would entertain any questions, and I would recommend your approval.
We have a motion.
I'd move approval as submitted.
This is Angie. I second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, comments, concerns from the board?
This is Angie. I think it looks great. I'm excited about it.
I agree.
And I ditto that. And thanks to Jamie too. She explained and Dr. Sanders explained that the preschool is going to have the same logo with their own mascot as well, which is kind of cool how it all pieces together. So thank you.
Yes, I like the whole logo also.
Okay, great. Then we'll vote by roll call. Mr. Durnall.
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs.
Yes.
Mrs. Mary.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
And Mr. Kerr is also a yes. So it passes consideration and it 5-0. So the next item on our agenda is consideration of awarding the bid for our Edgewood Junior High renovation project. Dr. Sanders?
Yes, George Link is joining us from VPS Architect, and I will let George explain the bid process and the results and his recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Sanders. I believe everyone, the board should have received a recommendation letter from VPS along with the bid tabulations, but on April 14th, we received bids for 3 projects. One is the addition to the Edgewood Primary School. One is the additions and renovations to Edgewood Junior High School, and the other one was the HVAC upgrade. I've got 3 different recommendations to make, so we'll start with the junior high school. Looking at that project, we are recommending that we award the project to T&G Construction for the base bid amount of $3,255,499. Then we also recommend that the board approve the value engineering change order, bringing the total contract award to $3,053,761 on it. I don't know if you want to take these one at a time, Jerry, or do you want to do them all together? Jerry?
Yes, we will award the bid. Let's do that separately and vote on the contract for T&G separately.
Okay, so that's our recommendation.
I move approval. Deborah.
I'll second, Jimmy.
Just to be clear, this is for the T&G for the Edgewood Junior High project.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Any questions or comments from the board? Well,
So Dana, quick question. This is the only one we're approving tonight, right? The other ones are going to be, George is going to explain, we're going to go out and rebid. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, I'm good then.
Okay. All right. Well, it's been moved and seconded. No further questions or comments. So we'll move to a roll call vote. Mr. Durnall?
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mary?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
And Mr. Kerr is a yes as well. So the resolution to pass the award bid or award the bid has been approved 5-0. And now I'll turn it back over to Mr. Link to discuss the other 2 projects.
Thank you. The Edgewood Primary School, we received 4 bids. The low bidder, there's 2 actions that would have to be taken on this one. The low bidder failed to turn in his bid bond at the time of the bid, so it has been recommended by the school board attorney that we reject this bid. So we are following their recommendation that we reject the low bidder from Building Associates on there for failure to comply with the bidding documents on it. And with that, if the board approves rejecting that bid, we are further recommending that the project be rebid, as the second lowest bidder was another $600,000 higher, and we're preparing documents for the rebid with an anticipated rebid date of June 11th.
Okay, so we have a recommendation to reject the low bidder in the addition to the elementary school project and to rebid that project. We'll take those together unless there's an objection from any board member. Do we have a motion?
I move approval for both.
I'll second, Jimmy.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any questions, comments from the board? Okay. Go ahead.
I do have a quick question. I'm not even sure if I know how to say this. Are we sure that delaying the process is going to bring in a better bid, or do we need to rework what we want done? Do you know what I'm saying?
We've actually gone back in and redesigned a few things and taken some alternates that we didn't have the first time around. So I also know that we will pick up at least 2 more bids that we didn't have the first time around. One contractor that was on the verge of bidding it, his site work contractor backed out at the last minute, so he couldn't submit. And then Strasser, who was busy when it originally came out to bid and wasn't going to bid it, they are now taking a look at it as well.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Hearing no further questions, by roll call vote, Mr. Durnall.
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs.
Yes.
Mrs. Mary.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
Mr. Kerr is a yes as well. Passes 5-0. So now the third project, Mr. Link.
The HVAC upgrades to the school corporation were also bid on April 14th. As the bid tabulation will show, we only received 1 bid at the time of the opening. The 1 bid that we did receive was over budget. We did receive a late bid, which we could not consider, that was considerably lower than the submitted bid. So we have met with Arnold to talk about some revisions and ways we can make some changes to get the project back down and under budget. And we are recommending at this time that we reject the low bid and put the project back out to rebid with the revisions as approved by Arnold, head of facilities.
Okay, do we have a motion to reject the low bid and to rebid the project?
I move approval. Deborah.
This is Angie. I'll second.
Any questions or comments from the board?
George, you have a rebid date on that?
I do not. I just received the information from revision information from the engineer this evening. So when I get back to the office tomorrow, I'll go through it. I would think that we'd probably go out sometime, probably hit the printer maybe next Tuesday. So it'd be roughly 4 weeks from then.
Okay.
So it'd be sometime 3rd week of June.
Okay, hearing no further questions, we have a motion and a second. So by roll call vote, Mr. Durnall.
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs.
Yes.
Mrs. Mary.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
And Mr. Kerr is also a yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Link, for walking us through those, and we appreciate your hard work on these projects.
Okay, thank you very much. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is to approve curriculum for the Edgewood Junior High School. Dr. Sanders.
Yes, so a few weeks ago, I met with John Sieglin, principal at the junior high, and also Rebecca Scott Guest, who is also a teacher at the junior high, English teacher. And they presented to me their recommendation to adopt Amplify Learning for their language arts curriculum. And throughout the conversation, I was just really impressed with how much the English department there at the junior high did their homework. There's something called a textbook caravan in Indiana, where teachers can go and hear presentations and talk to companies from all over the country, really, and throughout Indiana. And so from their visit to the textbook caravan, they looked at 3 more companies in more depth, and when they by that I mean they look at the samples, they get online and actually get to pour through the different curriculums and discuss and debate and end up making their recommendation. Mrs. Guest-Scott told me that Amplify curriculum did the best in aligning with Indiana state standards. Now, the Amplify curriculum will cost students $20.07 per year. But Mr. Sieglin and Mr. Irwin, our business manager, they are taking a look at textbook rental fees. Typically, when you adopt a new program, it is going to cost more, obviously. But then you take a look at your fees and items on your textbook rental, and you try to find some ways to keep the overall cost down. And so Mr. Sieglin and, like I said, Mr. Irwin are working on that now. And textbook rental fees are typically brought to the board in June, so we'll be looking at that next month. But Mr. Sieglin and I think I saw Rebecca Guest-Scott on here too. And so they may want to add something to what I've said, or they're also here to answer any of your questions.
Okay, anything to be added by Rebecca Guest-Scott or Principal Sieglin?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, John.
Yeah, I don't, I just want to emphasize kind of what Dr. Sanders said. We went through, it was a lengthy process. It started back in February. Rebecca and Allie McLaughlin went down to Terre Haute, the textbook caravan, and then we brought in several of those companies to make an in-person presentation to our language arts department, and they kind of dove into that piece. And we really pared down what we were looking for. We wanted to make sure it aligned with the direction that we were moving as a school and make sure it really would hit those, obviously the Indiana state standards, but really set us up for success as a language arts department and the direction that we were moving. And so we really felt like Amplify Learning did that. When we're talking about the cost of the program, it was really pretty consistent across the board with what we were comparing. So it wasn't like one was a lot more expensive or cheaper than the other one. All of them were pretty consistent. And like Dr. Sanders said, I'm working with Mr. Irwin. We're trying to make sure that the textbook fees stay as close to consistent as we can possibly keep them. So.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the curriculum for the Edgewood Junior High School?
This is Angie. I move approval.
This is Deborah. I second.
Any questions or comments from the board? Well, we want to thank all those who worked so diligently to try to adopt this curriculum. Sounds like there's a lot of different choices out there, and we appreciate the hard work in arriving at this recommendation. So by roll call vote, Mr. Durnall.
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs.
Yes.
Mrs. Mary.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
And Mr. Kerr is a yes as well. So the curriculum's adopted 5-0. The next item that we have is consideration to approve the Safe Visitor Background Check System. Dr. Sanders.
Yes. I remember one of the first things that I did as I think as interim superintendent probably was to tap two of our assistant principals, Jerry Pittsford at the elementary level and Jerry Bland at the high school level. I think I just like their name maybe. But they have done so much to lead our school corporation in terms of providing school safety, and Matt Irwin, he has come on board and he's taking the reins of the school safety committee, and he has a lot of experience too. And so for the last several months, we've been looking at some different companies to help us provide more accuracy on our background check system and be able to look and see what companies out there that would best meet our needs. And so the school safety team actually interviewed and talked to 3 different companies before arriving to a school safe visitor. And so Jerry Bland is on here tonight. And Mr. Bland, I think if you would take a few minutes and kind of share your insights and your recommendation.
Okay, yeah, I think it was last December, a year ago, that the school safety team with the tech director at the time and Cherry Pittsford and I started interviewing and going through 3 different companies, Lobby Guard, Safe Visitor, and Raptor Technologies. Really what we're looking for is a better, more thorough way to check backgrounds on those individuals coming in contact with our students, depending on which level of contact they're having. Safe Visitor is kind of a one-stop shop. They do not third-party vendor things out like the other 2. So their background checks and all of the things that we're talking about are handled through Safe Visitor as opposed to Raptor, who had a third-party vendor that did background checks for them. So the 3 tiers are the background checks for teachers and certified and non-certified staff. I kind of try to give you some bullets of everything they check. Angie Butcher had already did a little bit of this background footwork, if you would, leg work, in the fact that she was wanting a system for the corporation office that was better than what we were using. And she had already came to Safe Visitors being that person or that group. So what it does is the typical background check like we currently run, but it also helps us track our employees because of new state law and statutes. Every 5 years, that needs to be updated. Safe Visitors tracks that for us. It starts sending emails after 5 years to, or as that date approaches, to the teacher and to the corporation office that these staff members are due this year. So that's one phase. The other phase is the volunteer. And when I talk about volunteer background checks, I'm talking to those individuals that are chaperoning show choir, band, Bradford Woods, any of those things where they're not only having contact with our students, but they're having supervision type roles. So that background check it's like $17.95, just short of $18. But there's a 5-year arrest alert that I want to come back to in a moment that kind of, in my opinion, lowers that cost. But they do the background check, and currently, you know, we ask the parents for their information, their date of birth, their name. We do not ask for social security number, but we try to run a background check that we have, which is through My Case. If some of that information doesn't match, then it could present us with a false positive or a false negative, if you will. So there's just gaps, plus the current process is very time consuming on all of our secondaries, specifically those elementary secondaries, because that's where a lot more of them come. With that, we get the 5-year arrest alert. So what that basically means, they're paying for it in that $17.95. Student enters our corporation as a kindergartner, then the parents can run the background check and it'll be good for that 5 years. What it does for us is at any point in time, if anybody in our system would be arrested, they get entered into a database with law enforcement agencies and we get alerted of that arrest. Now, at that point in time, we can either excuse that offense, depending on what it is, or we can exclude due to that offense. So that leaves us the control to whether or not to allow them in the building. The third level of it is as parents or individuals enter our building, they would scan their state ID or their driver's license. We would upload any custodial issues like we currently do in Harmony already. but it would pop up right away that, hey, there's an issue here. This parent's not supposed to have contact. The other thing that it does is it runs a background check real quick against the National Sex Offender Registry. So it would tell us if there's some kind of alert of somebody coming into our building. It prints badges, gives them a time frame to be there. A lot of schools, I visited Mooresville, currently using Safe Visitor. And so a lot of schools have already implemented some type of this system.
All right, thank you, Jerry. We'd recommend your approval for Safe Visitor for our background check system.
We have a motion?
This is Angie. I'll second. It's Angie.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, by roll call vote, Mr. Durno.
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs.
Yes.
Mrs. Mary.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
And Mr. Kerr is also a yes.
Jerry, thank you very much for your work in that. That's really important that we get that done. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Very much so. Jerry, and Matt. Okay. The next item on our agenda is regarding an amendment to the farm crop lease on the property next to the elementary schools that'll be used for our future project and expansion of the preschool, but I'll turn it over to Dr. Sanders.
Yes, so the preschool connector project will extend 4.22 acres into the farm land that our school system owns next to Edgewood Primary School. As I said, we own the farmland, but we lease it to the property to Jay Naylor, who farms it. Now the lease agreement is automatically renewed every year by November 1st. So since we're looking at making a change to the agreement prior to November 1st, that is why an amendment is required. George Link, Dana, Matt Irwin, and I met Jay Naylor's son, Scott, and he was very understanding and very willing to cooperate and collaborate with us. So we worked with Christine to develop the amendment, and also with George Link in determining how much of the a compensation check that we would owe Mr. Naylor. And so Dane and I met with Scott Naylor once again, and were able to get Mr. Naylor's signature and also present him with the amendment, obviously, and a check for $572.90 and a receipt showing how everything was broken down. So we are just ready to get your approval so we can move forward.
We have a motion?
I move approval. Deborah.
Second is Brad.
Moved and seconded. And just for clarification, the check that was to Mr. Naylor was to compensate him for work he has already done this year on those that section of the fields that we're taking back. So, he already expended monies on those, so it was only right to compensate him since he's not going to be able to reap the benefits of that money spent. So,
thank you, Dan.
And we really appreciate the Naylor family for that. So moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, by roll call vote, Mr. Darnell.
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs.
Yes.
Mrs. Mary.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
And Mr. Kerr is a yes as well. Passes 5-0. Our next item on the agenda is consideration to approve the Indiana Bond Bank resolution And I'll turn it over to Matt Irwin for that one.
Hi, guys. This resolution that we're asking you guys to approve allows us to pursue using the Indiana Bond Bank for cash flow purposes of taking out a tax anticipation warrant for the operations and debt service funds. This is separate and unrelated from the construction bonds that are taking place at this time. This is strictly focused on keeping the cash flows needed for the corporation to function and pay bills like our debt service payments that are due in July on time because of the expected effects of the delayment and penalty of late payments of property taxes, like I had mentioned earlier when I was talking through the business manager's report. This resolution does not lock us into having to take the tax anticipation warrant should we end up getting a close to normal June distribution of taxes from the county. We've stayed in pretty close contact with the auditor's office to get as much information as possible about what to expect with that disbursement. At this time, the resolution is necessary to keep the process moving for a June 25th closing date and receipt of funds should we need to pursue it. But again, we are not locked into doing that. This resolution simply allows us to move forward with that process should we need to use it.
Do we have a motion to approve the Indiana Bond Bank resolution?
I move approval, Deborah.
A second, it's Brad.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? In the past, we had done tax anticipation warrants kind of on a regular basis due to the increased financial health that we've been able to achieve through the efforts of Mr. Irwin and Dr. Sanders and our previous and Paul Federer and others. We don't often have to do that anymore. However, given the fact of the coronavirus and the extension on payment of property taxes, as Mr. Irwin said, this has put us in a situation where we may and probably will have to do that again. Again, the resolution has been moved and seconded. So by roll call vote, Mr. Durnall.
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs.
Yes.
Mrs. Mary.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
And Mr. Kerr is yes as well. And the last action item on our agenda is consideration to approve an amendment to the bus contracts. Again, Matt Irwin, to turn it over to you.
Yeah, the amendment to the contract of bus routes that you guys are seeing for this May board meeting, the remainder of the 2019 school year pay. It was the amendment that we had talked about in last month's meeting. This amendment simply just states that the rate of pay was reduced by fuel costs for the duration of the 1920 school year, and it started with the pay that they received on April 24th. We will need to do a separate amendment in the near future that deals with any future occurrences like this for the remainder of the bus contracts. But essentially this, again, dealt with only fuel costs only for what would have been the remainder of the 1920 school year, and was that amendment that we felt like was fair to not only protect the bus contractors, but the people that they employ and their ability to continue to provide those services to the school district.
Okay. Ask for a motion.
I move approval, Deborah.
I'll second, Jimmy.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the motion to approve the amendment to the bus contracts?
Mr. Irwin, just a quick question on this. We're voting to finish out this school year until the end of May, but then we'll have to look at it again for next fall if necessary.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, right now we don't have anything that would deal with future occurrences. So this amendment simply just deals with the pays for what would have been the 1920 school year.
Okay.
We would need to talk about what that would look like in the future for the remainder of the bus contracts.
Okay, so yeah, because we still have a contract for next year already, and we're hoping we can get back and get rolling and start a school. So,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to say thank you to the bus contractors for working with the school corporation.
Absolutely.
Hey, Matt, it's Angie. I just wanted to thank you again for working with them. I've talked to several of them, and they've been very appreciative with the respect that you have given them and the concern for them as well as a corporation. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you to them as well. Like I said, my mom, I guys didn't know, my mom's still a bus driver up in Northeast Indiana. And so, I know kind of, the role that bus drivers play and for the school corporation and what they do for our families and our kids. And so they deserve a great deal of respect for what they do for not only our kids, but for our community. So thank you.
Don't brag too much about him. He'll get a big head.
They didn't hear that.
Okay. All right, by roll call vote, Mr. Durnall.
Yes.
Mrs. Jacobs.
Yes.
Mrs. Mary.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
And Mr. Kerr is also a yes. So we have approved the amendment to the bus contracts. Next item on the agenda is Dr. Sanders' superintendent report.
Very good. And thank you, everybody, for, I know we had a lot on this agenda, and I appreciate your patience. I'll try to be as quick as possible. I was looking over some emails I sent out on March the 6th, talking about this thing called coronavirus. And I remember that week before spring break, our teachers were working really hard to put together 2 weeks worth of e-learning, remote learning materials and learning activities. And of course, we had no idea that we would be out for 2 months. And I keep using this word about our teachers because, quite frankly, there isn't a better word. The word amazing. Because, kind of forget what happened from August until March and all the great things that they were doing in the classrooms. And just all of a sudden for what we were doing, for them to stop their plans and recreate their lessons and their activities for their students in a digital way, in a virtual way. Amazing really doesn't do it justice. And not only our teachers, but our students and parents who have worked so hard over the last couple months. And I think about those parents who have so much on their plate in terms of their worries about their job and trying to balance doing their own work at home and also being there to help their kids with their e-learning activities and our students. And I think about the young man who I don't think he missed a day the whole time parking in his big pickup truck out in front of the school. And I bought him a couple milkshakes along the way just to thank him for his dedication. I hear from other school corporations across the state of Indiana, and I don't think very few corporations have done as good a job with e-learning as RBB. And I've talked to some folks that I know, and they talk about how in their school corporation that they gave the students their work on Monday, and then the students had the whole week to get it done. And our teachers interacted and our students interacted Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And the high school students basically followed their daily schedule. So I just want to give everybody a big round of applause. And we don't know where our journey is going to take us next. As Brad said, I hope we get going in the fall with some normalcy, but we're also planning for just the unexpected and planning for different contingencies so that we can keep the ball rolling as well as we've done over the last couple months. with our healthy meals plan, just pat on the back to Vicky Coffey and her team. They averaged providing a week's worth of food, breakfast and lunch, to over 500 students. That was on average every week. Today was the last day for that. They will take next week off, and then in June start our summer feeding program, which will mean that we won't have the drive-through behind a junior high for the summer, but our food truck will be going out on a daily basis with hot meals, hot lunches for our students. And so that's exciting. As well as we know it does not match, it doesn't come close to matching day-to-day, face-to-face interactions with students and teachers. And so we are trying to find ways to improve e-learning for the future. We sent out a survey on that. And we also sent out a survey for parents. Now that they've taken this e-learning thing for a real test drive, they know how well their devices and their internet connectivity holds up to the demands of e-learning. And so we're gathering that data. I've been talking to some folks around Monroe County to put together an effort to extend the connectivity of our students. And this will not only help us educationally, but also connect our families to important services throughout Monroe County. And so now's the time for us to prepare for the future. We obviously hope we get back to school in the fall on a regular schedule, and we don't have to take a break next year to do some more e-learning, except if it's a snow day. And so we want to be able to make sure all of our students are ready to go with internet connectivity. We kind of delayed announcing dates for picking up students' belongings simply because we were waiting to hear what our county was going to do. And since they've lifted the stay-at-home order this Thursday and Friday, our students will be coming in to pick up their belongings. And the normalcy that we have right now is when we put together a plan, such as students coming to pick up their things, we run those plans through the Monroe County Health Department and get their approval, and they'll suggest some changes for us to help us to know how to make things safer for our students. So these plans have been vetted by the Monroe County Health Department, and so we'll get some of those student belongings back to them this Thursday and Friday. Because of the coronavirus situation, we are allowing our students, I see in my report, I said grades 6 to 12, but I should have said grades 6 through 11th grade will be keeping their Chromebooks home for the summer. And seniors will be returning their Chromebooks on Thursday, May 21st, from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. Right now, we are planning on just a virtual summer school for the high school only. It'll be an online program, May 26th through June 19th. We're hoping that we will still have some students who will be interested. I imagine right now they've had enough with virtual learning, but this will be an opportunity for some students to pick up on some lost credits. We're still laying out hope that maybe we could do a jump start program right before school starts, depending on the situation and the data that we have at the time. So I would like to just take this last minute of my report to congratulate the class of 2020. I hope that we don't just define them as a coronavirus class, because from August up till March, they were amazing to watch. I enjoyed so much. You know, Excuse me, I'm just thinking about, back at the beginning of the school year, and I think about, the show choir performances and the athletic events, and just seeing them throughout the high school, and they're an amazing group of students, and they didn't just give up during this coronavirus time. They really put out an excellent effort in their e-learning classes. I hope you've seen the banners that are on the light poles, and those are pretty cool. The billboard, if you haven't seen the billboard, that was paid for by the junior class, the class of 2021, which is inspirational in itself. And so our virtual commencement will be aired on May 30th at 11 a.m. And I'd just like to congratulate Mr. Ackerman, Mr. Bland, Mr. Musselwhite, and their staff. Saturday, they had an opportunity, first of all, between 8 and 9, the students who were giving their speeches, and Mr. DeMoss, you're going to want to hear his speech when this is aired. It's excellent. And so between 8 and 9, everybody gave their speeches and to an empty auditorium. And we all had our masks on and practicing social distancing. And then Mr. Ackerman had organized for groups of 20 students, seniors, to come at a time in their caps and gowns and masks to have the opportunity to walk across the stage and be able to pick up their diploma. And so I hope the community will turn in on May 30th and be able to watch that commencement. And finally, we're still laying out hope too that we could do a live commencement, and we have some possible dates lined out for us, just in case we can move forward with that. So that's my report. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain them.
Any questions for Dr. Sanders? Hearing none, we'll move on. Our next item on the agenda is the RBBEA comments. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Larry DeMoss.
Thank you, sir. I had the honor this afternoon. Mr. Ackerman said he needed to talk to me about 1 o'clock in his office. So turned out there was a parade. A number of cars went by, and I was congratulated on my retirement. So that was very touching. One of the cars contained Carol Burney, and Carol and I reminisced a little bit, and we talked about Janet Crawford, because Carol and Janet and I were all hired the same year, along with Jamie Miller's mother, Judy, and Fred Meyer, who most everybody knows. So we decided that was a pretty good year. But it was a lot of fun. I want to add my compliments to Jamie. I thought I was in the EWAT meeting last week on the Ready Schools Initiative, and it is amazing to me how well she and her team, how they synthesized everything that all of the stakeholders brought to the table, because there was so much that was laid out there, and they just put it together amazingly well. And I'm really excited to continue to support the school system, even if I'm not going to be in the classroom. And I think that this provides RBB with a wonderful opportunity to move forward. And then finally, I just want to echo what Dr. Sanders said. I want to commend the administrators for their leadership when everything fell apart. And I especially want to give kudos to Dirk Ackerman for the hard work that he did to put together the graduation ceremony, because I know it was a great disappointment to a lot of students and their families, and he did yeoman's work in pulling their ideas and trying to put it together. And I think it was a very touching and enjoyable ceremony. And I also want to tip my hat to my colleagues, my teacher colleagues, for, as Dr. Sanders said, in just a matter of days, having to develop an online education program. And I think that what they were able to come up with was just amazing. You've seen during this meeting how difficult the virtual environment can be. Brad found out what some of my students found out, that sometimes you just get kicked off and you don't know why, and it makes it difficult if the teacher is trying to make a point and suddenly a student just disappears. But the students worked really hard, and the teachers, I just have to thank them for everything that they did. It is hard. I was exhausted after the first couple of days. It was just such a, well, it's not what I've been doing for the last 30 years. So I told my department I felt like a rookie again. So, but it was hard for everybody. I hope we can get back into the building, but if not, we've got our feet wet. We know what we need to do. I think everybody has talked about what they would do differently and how they can do it better. So, and I do believe that RBB can be proud of what we've accomplished in these last couple of months. So thank you.
Mr. DeMoss, is this your last meeting?
Yeah, I probably won't be in, although I thought Randy had been here for his last meeting a number of years ago. So it's hard to tell what's going to happen in the future, but it certainly will be my last meeting in this capacity.
Well, Larry, it's been a pleasure to work with you, and you're just an amazing guy. And thank you for your comments at the board meetings and working with you in our discussions meetings and just as a fellow educator. And it's just been a real blessing to work with you.
Thank you, sir.
Well said, Dr. Sanders. We do appreciate you, Mr. DeMoss, and your service to our students, the corporation, and the teachers of the corporation. So thank you so much. Well, it's time for board member comments. So I'll go in reverse order. So Mr. Tucker.
Okay, Dana, am I there? Am I live? Okay. All right. So everybody else gets to say ditto for me then tonight. So thanks to people that gave donations this evening. There's quite a few really nice donations from the public. Appreciate that. Congratulations to all the retirees, not only in the classroom, but some more support staff. And it's not the way they wanted to retire. It's going to never be forgotten. But congrats to them on the retirement plans, and hopefully they'll get out and enjoy time with their families. I want to echo what Dr. Sanders said about Mr. DeMoss. As far as his representation of the local education association, he was nothing but a true joy to work with when I worked there. And I appreciate all his time and efforts to help make things get along within the teaching ranks and the administration. And I know he continued to do that after I left. So thanks, Mr. DeMoss, for that. And lastly, I want to just thank all the teachers. I lost track how many teachers were there on Saturday for graduation. All the teachers out and about, and Mr. Ackerman, administrators, did a great job of organizing that. And I'd never witnessed something like that before, so it was unique looking at some of the people on the stage with masks on, and just, I don't know, it's just tough. It's tough, but hats off to all the kids who accepted the challenge. And interesting comment from a young man yesterday who graduated, and I said, were you nervous when you went up there? And he said he practiced for half hour in the shower what he was going to say for 10 seconds. And I thought, boy, that's just really, it was unique watching the kids step up there and thank their parents and loved ones at the rose ceremony. So hey, hats off to all the graduates. Everyone stay healthy this summer, and let's hope and pray that we can reopen in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Mary.
I will say ditto because it's been a long meeting. But I do want to thank the teachers and the students, of course, but the teachers for all the hard work that they've been doing to get our students, try to keep them up to par and ready for school in the fall, however that's going to look. Parents, just remember it's important to keep your child as involved as you possibly can. Reach out for help if you can't do what should be done, because you don't want your child to fall behind because of this unforeseeable episode that has happened in this world. And I would like to say I enjoyed watching the unusual graduation for a little bit on Saturday. Good luck to all the graduates, and best wishes in what they want to do, and hopefully they can get to it soon.
Thank you, Mrs. Mary. Mrs. Jacobs. I believe we lost Mrs. Jacobs. If she comes back on, we'll add her back in. Mr. Durnall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too want to wish the retirees well. Mrs. Crawford, I got to know her real well last 2 or 3 years, being up at the elementary schools, and of course enjoy being around Mrs. Whitaker and Mrs. Lee. They do a wonderful job there. Larry, good luck to you. So enjoyed working with you at this timing bench for years, and you did a wonderful job for a long, long time. We appreciate that. Also, I want to thank, if you noticed this weekend, the Ellisville Lions Club cleaned State Road 46 eastbound all the way from the police department clear to Arby's. And of course, that included a lot of Edgewood, Richland Bean Blossom property there, so we really appreciate that. And speaking of graduation, I figured out the other day when I was moaning around not being able to make graduation Saturday, I'd been to 28 of 55 graduations, I think, with nieces and nephews and my boys, but I really missed that. So I hadn't missed a graduation since 2001. So I really had a rough time Saturday, but I hope to be able to, if we have another one, I hope to be able to make it. So thank you so much. Jerry, appreciate all you do for us.
Thank you, Mr. Durnall. Looking at some of the notes I made, one of the biggest one is innovation. Our school corporation has been so innovative in dealing with the current situation. There's a lot of words that I hope I never hear again, like unprecedented and coronavirus and COVID and it's just crazy. But through all that, everybody has come together and collaborated and still made such a wonderful positive impact on our students. And so I know that we're head and shoulders above the rest and what we do for our students, whether it's the education, food, mental health, all these things. Just really appreciate where we're at, where we're going, and so excited for Edgewood Schools. And I do like the new logo and things, calling it Edgewood Schools, because we are the RBB School Corporation, of course, but we're all about the schools. So it's putting the schools there first, I think is a great way to brand our system. So I appreciate the hard work that all's put into that. We do really want to appreciate CATS for being able to use this Zoom to be able to continue to make sure our meetings get to the public. Same thing with Emily Cox with the Herald Times. I'm so glad she could be a part of this and keep up with the schools as well. And lastly, graduation. It's been really exciting to be on the school board and be a president at the graduations, and it was just so different, of course, this year with the virtual style. But I tell you what, they have worked so hard. Mr. Ackerman and all the teachers and the students have all worked collaboratively to come up with this the virtual graduation. And even though it was different, it was truly special to be a part of that. So we appreciate all those. Another group that didn't get mentioned much is we do have the building corporation that works with us with the bonds, and Mr. Wright is a part of that, along with Mr. Cravens and Mr. Williams, and appreciate Mr. Wright staying on for this meeting as well. Appreciate all you guys do for us. So appreciate your continued dedication. And again, thanks everyone for being a part of this, allowing us to continue to have these meetings, to continue to make progress, and you're all an integral part of that. So we really appreciate it. So with that, this meeting is adjourned. Have a great night.
Good night. Good night, all. Good night. Good job, Mr. President.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Night.